Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale of a bookish trip.
Hi, I'm Melissa Wardwell. I am one of the authors for the Independence Island series. I'm book two. Well, two in the series. Anyway, and I am the author of Scrumptious Independence. And Sandy asked us to share the first chapter, read it aloud for you all. So that's what I'm going to do. This is a little weird for me, so please be patient. All right, here we go. Chapter 1. Millions of sand particles engulfed her feet as she stood at the ocean's shore with her Graham. Waves crept further and further inland, each one hitting the beach with unattainable force. Behind them, on the top of the cliff above, stood a small white stone cottage with hurricane shutters propped open to welcome the salty summer breeze. Wildflowers and tall grasses acted as a barrier between the cottage and the rest of the world. Graham's fragile hand rested at the bend of Beth's arm as the sea spray and sun kissed their skin. Elizabeth watched Graham out of the corner of her eye as the woman closed her eyes to the wind that was blowing through her gray hair. A smile spread wide across her face, forcing the elderly woman's features to soften and reflect her youth spirit. This is where I belong, sugar. There is no other place on earth as heavenly as this spot. The quake in Graham's voice reflected her love for the location. Where are we, Graham? You know where this is. Look around. This is home. The woman turned to Beth, giving her a stern look. When I go to Jesus, you bring my body right here. Understand? Taken aback by the command, Beth pressed for clarification. You're not going anywhere, though, right, Graham? I love you, my darling child. Never forget that. Her nerves rattled with the vibration of the phone on the nightstand by her bed, jarring her from the dream. With one eye peeking at the neon red light that displayed at the time on her bedside clock, she contemplated waiting to check to see who would be crazy enough to send her a text at 3 o'clock in the morning. Closing her eye, she chose to ignore the alert. It was most likely a wrong number or a spam texter. But then it buzzed again. She opened an eye again to catch the full name in capital letters on the screen before the backlight went out. She had to respond now. Before she could get a look at the first text, another one came through. Something was wrong. Her sleepy brain ticked through the list of possibilities. Daddy's been working long hours. Could he have worked himself into a heart attack? Mom had a biopsy done the other day on a mole. I hope it isn't cancer. Wait, why would she text me for that? Maybe Graham? No. She's like an iron horse. Beth opened the first text from her mother. Graham is gone. Get yourself together and get home. Beth lived in a tiny one-bed, one-bath apartment in the heart of Ann Arbor. It was a place she found right after graduation that brought her closer to Graham, but as far as possible from her parents and siblings. As long as she lived here, they had no say in her life, and this was home. Mother's second message was her text yelling at her for not responding. Then a third text came from her older sister, Barbara, also yelling at her to wake up and answer. All Beth could do was look back at those first 3 words of her mother's original message. Graham is gone. What did she mean by that? At 87, the answer seemed obvious. but Beth had to hear for herself. She tapped the image of her mother at the top, selected FaceTime, and called. "Hello?" Carolyn Stevens' voice came through with her signature blasé tone. "Mother, what do you mean Graham is gone?" "Gone where?" The screen illuminated as her mother turned on the bedside lamp. Irritation flashed in her eyes. Some would say that Carolyn Stevens was the perfect wife and mother. Beth chose to see her mother for what she was, or is. A woman concerned only with herself and cannot be bothered by the youngest of the family. "Why did you FaceTime me? You know I hate the way I look in this thing. I mean, seriously, Elizabeth. It's just completely inconsiderate to call at this time in the morning." "Mom, what happened to Graham?" Her mother's concern for her looks, when this could be a life-changing conversation, annoyed Beth as much as her phone vibrating on the nightstand. "Well, what do you think? Graham passed away. I just got a call from her housekeeper." Gone. Graham was gone? How could her rock be gone? Beth struggled to inhale as her mother rolled her eyes at the screen and the screen went black. Her grandmother, the only one in the family who had her back, who encouraged her dreams to run a restaurant, the one who paid for culinary school. And she was no longer part of this life. And all her mother could do was roll her eyes. Her own mother is gone. She doesn't seem to care. Her lungs burned in her chest as the phone slipped from her grip. When she could grab a breath, it was short and rapid. Her eyes began to ache as the tears began to pool. At last, the sob escaped her, and Beth leaned over her crisscrossed legs and screamed into the pillow in her lap. This could not be happening. There was still so much more she needed to have Graham around for. There were so many recipes they needed to perfect, more stories to be shared. Her mom had to have her information wrong. But Beth knew in her heart that it was so. Images from her dream, just moments before, flooded back into focus. And she knew that that dream was Graham somehow saying goodbye. Journal entry, May 10th. I can't believe you're gone. I thought we would have so much more time together. More time to create, more time to laugh, more time to share. Now I'm sorry I didn't come over last night after work. You asked me to, but I let my busy schedule get in the way. I'm so sorry. But how am I going to do this without you around? You've always been there for me, guiding me through each milestone. I guess I'll get through somehow. I promise I'll do my best to make you proud. I just don't see how yet. Beth. Chapter 1 is a little short, so I'm going to read Chapter 2. Chapter 2. 3 days after the funeral, the family sat crowded in the way too small office of Graham's lawyer, the garish, knotty pine paneling making the room more like a cave than a place of business. Beth sat in a simple fabric chair on the far corner of the office. Her view of the city skyline gave her something better to look at than the putrid green shag carpet. For as much as Graham paid the attorney, one would think he would be able to afford an office makeover. When the man himself walked into the room, she figured that probably was not going to happen. His polyester brown suit, with a wider than normal lapel, had been matched with a yellowing button-down shirt. Even the brown leather, pointed-toe shoes indicated his lack of style for the 21st century. A familiar voice spoke in her ear. "Don't you be so judgmental, child. Maybe his wife likes to live in the 70s as well." Beth looked around the room to search for Graham's face. Sadly, she had not miraculously appeared. "Thank you all for coming. Let me start by saying how sorry I am that this world had to lose such a lady as your mother." The lawyer, Mr. Nettles, shook Mother's hand as he spoke. "Thank you. I think I can speak for everyone by saying the sooner we get this part done with, though, the sooner we can move on with grieving." Her mother replied in a frigid tone that made Beth's skin crawl. Her parents sat in high-back chairs in front of the man's ed desk, while Barbara sat with her husband Tom on the love seat. Catherine sat with her husband David in two other folding chairs on the opposite side of the room from Beth. Dr. Andrew Stevens, her father, checked his phone and pager while the lawyer moved around his desk to take his seat. Her father was a surgeon in the famed University of Michigan hospital. His knowledge was vast in the surgical world, and his wills were lined with the proof. His beautiful wife, Carolyn, sat as stoic as ever by his side, not a stitch out of place. She was perched and poised, ready for the hefty sum she would soon receive from her mother's estate. Beth and her sisters knew not to expect much much more than a few trinkets from her grandmother. Their mother, the sole heir, made that very clear to them during their growing up years. Mr. Nettles pressed a button on the little recorder beside him, cleared his throat, and opened the manila envelope. For as much as Granddad and Gram owned in stock, bonds, properties, and who knows what else, Beth expected it to be much thicker than it was. Gram must have kept things simple and clear. All Beth wanted was the cookbook they had created over the years and Gram's Bible. Nothing else mattered to her. Elizabeth Merriweather Jenkins insisted that her will be read immediately after her passing. "So here we are," stated Mr. Nettles. "I will be starting off with her letter to all of you, and then move right in on her wishes. My beautiful family." The moment he spoke, his voice disappeared in Beth's mind and was replaced with Graham's soft, shaky voice. Beth closed her eyes and soaked in the wonder of the transformation. "I'm sorry that I had to leave you. I was so looking forward to watching the great-grandbabies grow up. Clearly, God had other plans. I can only hope that in my years I conveyed to you all how proud I am of you. I prayed for you daily in hopes that you will continue to see the hand of the Almighty in your lives. He has surely blessed you abundantly. My will does not read as you might have expected. I hope you all can find it in your hearts to forgive me in this. Please do not show hostility to others who will benefit from my decisions. The choice is not theirs, and they were not told ahead of time." Beth tried not to snicker at her Graham's forwardness. Everyone thought Graham was starting to lose her mind, but the woman was sharper than Beth. She was a master of observation and could see right through the fake personas some of her family members would show. Mr. Nettles proceeded to tell her sisters what they would be receiving. A few pieces of jewelry, and other specific household items that were family heirlooms. Beth watched as shock began to register on their faces when the lawyer moved on from their bequeathments. He then moved on to Mother and Daddy. My darling daughter, you are the light of my life. You are smart, cunning, and a true leader. Graham had always said those things about her daughter, but a hint that these were traits used to manipulate others lingered in her tone. You have done well for yourself in finding a man capable of providing you with the life that resembled the one that your daddy offered. For this reason, I leave you. Mr. Nettles listed pieces of artwork, family treasures, her fine china, and the deed to the lake house in Ludington, Michigan. What? That's it? The shrill tone made Beth cringe. Her mother was many things, but humble was not one. She wanted the finer things at all times. There was no imitation crab in her salads. Only the real thing would do. The woman didn't wear just any jeans. They had to be the designer brands. Beth's father caught her attention with an eye roll as her sisters rushed to their mother's side to console her, bringing her a Kleenex box and spoke in hushed tones. The overreaction really was laughable. Their willingness to give into the family Jezebel was irritating. Who gets the stocks, the house, the rest of the furnishings? Her mother sniffled while shooing her oldest two daughters away. Her father placed his left elbow on the arm of the chair and rested his head in his hand, slightly shaking. Well, Mr. Nettles looked at Beth, hesitance and an apology registering in his face. Miss Elizabeth Stevens, actually. Beth's jaw began to slacken as the room came to a hush. Me? Why me? Graham and Beth spoke of the estate's total value not long ago. She marveled when all her Graham mapped out for her, all her Graham mapped out for her. Now she saw that the woman was filling her in on what would soon be hers. The details that she would need to pay close attention to as she navigated these next few weeks. Mr. Nettles stood from his chair, moved around the desk, and approached her with a thick envelope that she had not seen before. He held the 8 by 11 colored envelope to her. She gave me explicit instructions to hand this directly to you. You will find a letter from your grandmother along with deeds, policies, appraisals, stock certificates, and bonds. Beth's hands shook as she took the offered item. She knew the value of these simple papers held. The thought of her own value sent ripples of fear through her. In one swoop of a pen, she was richer than her parents and siblings put together. Graham, why me? She looked at her family for some sort of reassurance that she was still loved by them. Instead, she was met with scathing glares, slack jaws, and a hidden smirk from her daddy. He was the only one left in her support group. A lifeline that would love her no matter what, yet she wasn't confident she could always count on him to be available. It took less than 10 minutes for the office to clear out, all except Beth and Mr. Nettles. Her mother, sisters, and their husbands left within seconds. Her father approached her before following them. He held his hand out to her and wiggled his fingers. When she put her hand in his, a hand that had held hearts from all over the country, he pulled her into a hug. You don't need to worry about them. Your Graham did the right thing. Still holding her, he took a step back. You and I and Graham know that those boys would have wasted the money in a hot minute. And your mother would have been more stuck up than she is now. I love her. But she can be, well, never mind that. Your Graham knew what she was doing. And it is a good thing. He leaned down to whisper in her ear. I would recommend getting a better lawyer than this guy, though. And a good investor. You're going to need it. Her eyes shifted to Mr. Nettles to see if he had heard, but the man was busy at his desk. Her daddy kissed her cheek and left her standing in the middle of the dated office. There was no going back to her simple life now. Graham had changed all of that. What worried Beth was whether it was for the better. Journal entry, May 13th. What was she thinking, leaving me almost everything? My mother is clearly furious. My sisters are green with envy. My only ally is Daddy. I'll do my best to fulfill her wishes, but it's not going to be easy. God, I need some help. They will shred me so they can get what they want. So I'm going to need to gather up all the courage I can to complete the task Graham has issued me with. Talk about being thrown into a lion's den. Note, to whoever reads this, if or when I go missing, talk to my mother first. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that, and sorry for the fumbles. There's this wonderful thing that happens when you read your work out loud. You see all your mistakes. So, as I'm sure you already know, this will be coming out on August, and I cannot wait to share it with you. Have fun and be blessed.